what PMVA really teaches beyond restraint, safety, capacity, and the window of tolerance. In the last video, you heard the story. If you haven't watched it, go back and do that first, because today we're not retelling that story. We're extracting the structure behind it. And to do that properly, we need to talk about something important: intuition. You see, in health and social care, intuition plays a crucial role. You walk into a room and something feels different. Maybe a shift in the tone of the people you're hearing, or a subtle withdrawal, or a change in pace of the person that is in the room, or an atmosphere that you can't immediately explain. In this state, experienced staff often say, I just had a feeling. That feeling isn't superstition, it's intuition. And intuition is rapid, unconscious pattern recognition that is based on accumulated experience. That's intuition. Your brain is constantly scanning around for change, for deviation from baseline, for signs of pressure that usually should not be there. And it draws on your memory. It draws on past exposure. It draws on micro expression. It draws on body language, on voice. All of that processing happens before your conscious thought catches up with it. And that's intuition. In many cases, it's accurate, but there's a professional shift here. Intuition is powerful, but it is also shaped by fatigue, bias, stress, and personal history, which means it can guide you or it can mislead you. And because of that, in high-risk environments, intuition cannot operate alone. It must sit on a structure, and structure validates what intuition detects. Structure slows your reaction into assessment. We call it dynamic risk assessment, among other things, but structure protects against assumption. You see, PMVA provides that structure for you. PMVA is not a reaction model. It's a prevention architecture. It does not replace intuition. It disciplines intuition. It turns the idea that something feels off into, what early indicators am I seeing here? What does the care plan say? Where is this person's window of tolerance right now? What environmental pressures are present as we speak? And when PMVA is understood properly and in that manner, what happens is it reshapes how professionals work and how organizations operate. Because prevention is not instinct alone. It is instinct guided by structure. And that structure is PMVA. So essential number one, just remember, behavior is late stage data. You see, PMVA begins long before behavior. By the time you observe aggression physically, the person is already escalated. So things have already been going on in the background that is putting the person under stress and strain and causing them to physically be aggressive or verbally or otherwise. You see, trigger awareness means reading what comes before escalation. Changes in tone, withdrawal, repetition, sensory overload, or environmental friction. For example, Tom that I mentioned in the other video, coming into the classroom, turning off the light wasn't just non-compliance. No. It wasn't resistance. No. It wasn't bad attitude. It was information. It was signals. And in clinical environments, most of that information is already documented. You know where? You guessed it. In care plans, among other places. Care plans are not just paperwork. No, they are prevention tools. EHCPs are not formalities. They are psychological maps. They tell you, among other things, what overwhelms this individual, what stabilizes them, what sensory inputs matter to them, what trauma history is relevant to their care, what routines protect their capacity. You see, if you skip that step, even your best intentions can become triggers. Not because you're careless. No, not because you're a bad person or incompetent professional. No, but because you're not informed. And prevention without information is risk. For professionals watching this, before you manage behavior, you need to know the person. For organizations, if you want fewer incidents in your services, protect time for proper handovers and care plan literacy, because trigger awareness starts before the actual interaction begins. PMVA essential number 2, primary prevention, the environment before intervention. So primary intervention asks this question: how do we reduce pressure before it builds up? In the previous video, you saw French toast became structure. That wasn't indulgence. That was environmental design. Primary prevention says, look, if you stabilize the context, you reduce escalation probability. Professionally, this means clear routines, consistent staffing where possible, sensory awareness, physical environment review. You review the physical environment, that means a lot. And organizationally, this means stop expecting staff to compensate for unstable systems. If the environment is chaotic, incidents will rise. And that's not because staff are weak, but because behavior does not happen in isolation. You see, behavior happens inside systems. And that means inside routines, inside staffing patterns, inside physical environments, inside leadership expectations. And systems either stabilize people or it strains them. And strained environments produce strained behavior. You see, everything is connected. So if you want fewer incidents, design better conditions. And that's organizational prevention. You're dealing with it from an organizational level. So essential number 3, co-presence. Before self-management, self-regulation is not automatic. It is learned and it is strengthened over time. When a person's window of tolerance narrows and when pressure rises, when overwhelm increases, then internal capacity can temporarily drop. And in those moments, external steadiness becomes protective. So before someone can steady themselves or regulate themselves, they may need to borrow steadiness from someone else, particularly when their internal capacity is under strain. This, by the way, is not dependency. It is developmental. The human nervous systems are relational. We regulate through connection before we regulate independently. That's why staff presence matter. Not volume, not authority, not control. Presence, tone, pace, body language, breathing, because your nervous system, your entire person becomes part of that intervention. I like to say to people, let the service user know I'm here for you. I'm present. Make yourself visible, make yourself available. But in a chaotic environment, it's difficult for staff to do that. And if staff is not well trained on how to regulate themselves, put themselves in a space where they are in control of their own emotional and mental system, how can they support the service user? I like to say you can't give what you don't have. If you're internally all over the place, you will not be your best self and you'll not be able to essentially support the service user whom you are there to work with. But here's the thing to keep in mind. Co-presence does not mean rescuing. It does not mean over-soothing. It does not mean removing responsibility. It means offering enough stability for the person's own capacity to come back online, if you will. And over time, as that capacity strengthens, external support reduces. And that's enlargement of their window of tolerance. For professionals, this means your regulation is part of your own skill set. For organizations, this means if staff are chronically strained, fatigued, unsupported, or emotionally overloaded, they cannot provide steadiness to anyone else. You cannot expect regulation from environments that do not protect it. Co-presence is not soft. It is structural. And when it becomes normalized across a team, incidents reduce, not through force, but through capacity building. Number 4, functional purpose of behavior. PMVA teaches one powerful question. What is this behavior doing for the person? Not how do we stop it, but what need is being expressed through this behavior. Withdrawal may be protection for them. Repetition may be settling for them. Running laps may be discharge of excess energy. When the function is met, the behavior often fades away. Professionally, this shifts you from control to curiosity. Organizationally, this shifts culture from suppression to understanding. And when that shift happens consistently, windows of tolerance in the organization expand as a norm. Essential number 5, secondary prevention. Once safety is stable, capacity can then expand gradually. And in the previous video, you saw us do that with eggs, butter, and bread. That was not random. That was targeted capacity building. Secondary prevention sits in the middle space. If you run it too fast, you collapse it. Too slow, it becomes stagnation. So just enough growth as you travel along. For professionals, this means that you should expand capacity deliberately. For organizations, you want to reward the developmental progress, not just incident avoidance. Because restraint reduction is not the goal. Capacity expansion is ultimately the goal. Restraint reduction is the byproduct. Let's make this explicit and let's deal once and for all. Zero restraint is not a slogan. It's a system outcome. It comes out if you do some certain things. PMVA success is not better restraint. PMVA success is not needing restraint. When safety becomes the baseline, incidents reduce. When autonomy grows, step-down pathways become possible. That's culture, not policy, organizational culture. The truth of the matter is that these principles do not stay at an individual level. When they're embedded into organizational culture, incidents reduce, stability increases, autonomy grows. We've seen supported living environments apply this properly. Multiple houses, complex profiles, high emotional intensity, and when prevention becomes the norm, service users progress. And because of that, capacity expands. That's PMVA embedded into organizational culture. So PMVA is not about controlling people when they lose control. I can't say this enough. It's about expanding capacity so that escalation becomes less likely. And if you're a professional, again, that means preparation, presence, and progression. Lock that in. And for organizations, that means creating enabling environments where staff and service users can both enlarge their window of tolerance as a norm. And that's the work. I'll see you soon. Until then, keep your flag flying.